welcome to the ICI video series on shearing for health. Although there are lots of reasons to shear for beauty and for show, today we're going to focus exclusively on shearing for the health of your animal. We have two volunteers today. This is Temptress the llama and Chelsea the alpaca. Shearing should be an annual event for most farms. Although there are some climates that don't require shearing, other climates require a monthly shearing. It depends on the climate that you live in, and we want to leave that up to you. But make no mistake about it, heat stress is a very, very critical thing to work through once an animal gets heat stress, and the best prevention is an annual shearing. Depending on your climate will help you determine when you're going to shear. But typically, an annual shearing will happen in late April, May, and early June. Along with vaccinations, deworming, and toenail trimming, you should shear your animals once a year. And even though you're going to deworm more often than that, it's a great way to get your hands on your animals, to assess their health, and also build a good relationship with them. One of the first considerations as you're preparing to shear your animals is the type of equipment that you'll be using. Today we'll be demonstrating hand shearing and electric shears. Hand shears can be as simple as a pair of scissors. I like these scissors because they have a spring, so I'm actually only using my hand to close the scissors and not having to use the extra muscles to open them. And if you're doing a lot of animals by hand, that really saves energy. And additionally, you can use shears as traditional as these hand shears, which we commonly think of for shearing wooled animals, sheep and Angora goats. If you don't have very many animals to shear, the hand shears work wonderfully. But if you have a lot of animals, llamas and or alpacas to shear, I recommend using electric clippers. They're quicker and require less hand energy from you. It really doesn't matter what kind of clippers you're using, but the blade selection is very important. If you order a set of clippers that don't specifically have camelid or llama or alpaca blades, a good mohair or a medium to coarse wool blade is the kind of blade that you want to use on your clippers. If you're using electric clippers, it would be worth the investment to have 2 or 3 sets of blades so you can switch them out and continue shearing your animals and not have to wait to get your blade sharpened in between animals. In addition to the type of clipper you're going to use, it's also important to have a good lubricating oil. You want to follow your manufacturer's recommendations when it comes to oiling your clippers. The important thing to remember, and most manufacturers recommend that you oil frequently. And it just seems like you're oiling all the time, but it's really important for the life of your clippers, the machine itself, as well as the life of the blade. Typically, you're going to put oil in the 2 little holes on the cutter blade and also in the hole that's pre-designed right there on the clipper, and then you're ready to turn your clippers on and you'll have nice, smooth cutting. Just like your clippers, your coolant, lubricant, and or cleaner is going to have directions on the back of the can. It's important to remember to always shake it up before you spray it. And I like to have my clippers running when I spray the coolant, because the cleaner, it needs to get in between the blades and really clean, and it can't do that if the blades are stationary. Preparing your animal to be shorn, once you've determined what kind of clipping you're going to do, you will want to make sure that you take off or brush off or blow out as much dirt and vegetable matter as possible. Dirt, dust, and vegetable matter are the things that dull your blades the fastest, whether you're shearing by hand or whether you're using electric clippers. Temptress has a lot of straw and vegetable matter in her, so we're going to start by trying to get that out. Now, you need to know your animal. If you have an animal that's very nervous and not going to stand still, then restraint might be necessary. But I like to use restraint as minimally as necessary, but you also want to always be safe. You want to consider your safety as well as the safety of your animals. So if you have a brush, you can brush them out. And then also, if you have a blower, blowing out as much as you can is wonderful. Remember, llamas and alpacas love their dust. It keeps them from getting matted, and it keeps them nice and cool. And it also takes the life out of clipper blades. There are a variety of brushes and equipment that can be used to get dirt and debris off of your llamas and alpacas. This is just a regular brush, and I really like it after they're shorn to get all the second cuts and things after them. My favorite brush is this brush that has a nice handle. I can control it, and I can just flick all the dust and dirt off of them as I go. If you have two people, or if you have helpers, which I always recommend, having somebody at their head so they can talk to them, maybe give them some hay or some food is a wonderful option. I find if the llamas and alpacas have something to think about other than you messing with their fleece, they stand very well. Shearing is not invasive, and it shouldn't be scary. Oftentimes when they're really young, when an animal's really young, they will, they either jump out of their skin and they're all over the place, or they're scared stiff and they don't move. But once they've been shorn once or twice and the llama or alpaca knows what you're going to do, they typically just stand still. As soon as you have your halter on your animal and you're ready to go, the important thing to remember is the less stress, the better. The less stress on you and the less stress on the animal, the better the situation. Extremely important if you're working with animals that might be compromised in some way, as well as your pregnant females. So always want to think about what can I do to make it the most comfortable for the llama or the alpaca, and what's going to create the least amount of stress on the animal and you. When you're preparing their fleece and getting the dirt off of them, you only really need to worry about where you're going to shear. I don't need to get the hay and straw off their neck because I'm not going to shear Temptress' neck today. Temptress is all ready to be shorn, so we have her in a chute. And again, my philosophy is the least amount of strength necessary, the happier they're going to be. But most llamas and alpacas need a place where they know they're safe, they know they're not going to get hurt, and you need a place where you know you're not going to get hurt, as well as you're not going to be shearing a moving target. So Temptress is minimally restrained in this chute. We're going to do half of Temptress with hand shears and half of her with electric shears. My rule is when you're in the chute and you're being worked with, especially when you're being shorn, if you're a camelid, you can have as much food as you want. We're going to begin with hand shearing. And before, whether you're hand shearing or electric shearing, you want to think about where you're going to shear. The primary area that you need to get the fleece off of your animal is their barrel. Their barrel is right around their belly. It's the largest surface area that they have. It's what's going to allow the wind to blow across. It's what's going to cool them the most because it's the largest surface area. If you have an animal that's compromised, or you're concerned that it's on the edge of having heat stress, I recommend that you go ahead and take the neck wool off as well as off of the hips. Just get as much of that fleece off as you can. But in general, when you're shearing just for your annual herd health for most of your animals, the barrel is what you need to do. We start at their withers. Find the withers. That's, if you were measuring their height, that's one of the places you would be. So that's the tallest place on their back, right where their shoulder-neck junction is. Okay? And we're going to move down to their axillary region, and they have a vent. You can see there's short hair there where airflow is. That's how they were designed, okay? So you go from that axillary vent area right straight up to their withers. And then you're going to do the same thing back here. Find their hip bones and find them right there. That's right where their legs and their back, that's that junction, and you're going to go straight down to this axillary region right here, and you can see where they don't have hair. Now, even if they had 12 inches of fleece hanging on them, you can find these areas, these axillary areas, these vent areas, do not have long hair on camelids. So it's a really, really good flag for you. It's a good marker for you of where to begin. So now we're ready to start shearing. I like to have a bucket or a place to harvest. It makes cleanup a lot easier. Plus, it makes the fleece that I do shear off nice and clean, helps keep it clean for when I want to produce something with it. When you're using the hand shears, it's very important to lift up so you're cutting away from their skin. And remember, you do have a sharp instrument in your hand. So Temptress is doing a great job of being still. And I like to use my hand, so I'm actually shearing to where I'm going. I have a good visual. That's really important if you have a very woolly animal, so that you can't really see where you're going, but if you have your hand here, you have a good guideline of which direction you're going to. And my rule of thumb is I like to color between the lines. So I'm going to make my outline, my guidelines of where I'm shearing first. So now I've gone from her withers to her axillary area, and I'm ready to go back here, find her hips, find where I'm going to stop here, and I can start shearing back here. Now I'm ready to color between the lines. I wouldn't be a very good llama fleece judge if I didn't make this one comment that the top line, as you're shearing it, this is the fleece that takes the bulk of the environment and collects most of the dirt. And if you want to make a product with your fleece, this is not to be included in what you're harvesting. So when I shear off the top line, I go ahead and I do put it on the ground, and I don't put it in my harvesting basket. I like to shear, typically going the same direction, but really in the end, give your animal a week or two and you won't even be able to see any of these bumps or the unevenness. So it really doesn't matter what it looks like as long as you get the fleece off of the animal. That's going to help keep them healthy, and when you have healthy animals, you have so many fewer problems. As you shear, if you, in your mind, think about trying to leave 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of fleece. That's about perfect with hand shears, and that's very doable. You don't need to get right down to their skin. They don't have to look like they've been shaved necessarily. They just need to have short hair. One of the other things to consider, and with hand shears, you do have a lot of control over how long you leave the hair, and you can always go back. You can't put it back on, but you can always go back and take more off. But something really to consider, and a nice thing to remember when you're hand shearing, even if you have an animal, if you brought an animal onto your farm that hadn't been shorn and you were worried that it wouldn't have enough regrowth, is you can shear it a lot longer. I could take it and shear it outside of my fingers, and I could do that, and in Ohio, I could do that in August or September and still be confident that they would have enough fleece grown back that they wouldn't be cold in the winter. So hand shearing gives you a lot of flexibility as to how much fiber you leave on your animal and how you're preparing them to succeed through the upcoming winter. I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that you're safe and your animal's safe. When you start getting down to underneath their barrel and some lower areas, people have a tendency to stand in an awkward position and to be out of balance. The llamas and the alpacas are starting to get tired of it and get a little bit fidgety, and that is a time that it's really important to make sure that you have your feet underneath you, you're in good balance. If something happens, if somebody comes, your animal gets scared or something, you're not going to get knocked over or bumped or twist your back or hurt a knee or something. So always remember when you're working with animals to stay in balance and keep them in balance so they're comfortable, and you'll just have us in a really successful shearing. Now that we've finished this side with the hand shears, you can see the V for vent, the V where we've taken it, and we've got this opened up here so there can be good air circulation underneath their front legs, and we have this V here opened up so there's good air circulation in the back, and she has a large area all around here, including underneath her belly, where the air can get to her skin. Now we're ready to begin with the electric shears. The same process happens with electric shears, only it happens a bit quicker. So you're going to begin at the withers, visually find the withers, and find that vent in the axillary region, and we're in your mind, make the picture of a line that's going to go straight up to that spot. And you're going to do the same thing back here. You're going to find this axillary region right here, this vent right here, and you're going to go either straight up to where you were on the other side, if this, like in this instance, we're doing the second side, so your both sides match up, or up to your hip bone, or if you're going to shear it off the hip, you decide where you're going to come off the hip, and you still would come from that axillary region over, and then it's just like coloring. You're going to color between the lines. But once you're done, you can stand back and take a look at them, and you don't want to forget that you just took all of their protection off of the part of their body that you just clipped. So be sure that you put some fly spray on, because the flies are going to be looking for places where they can bite them that they couldn't reach before because they didn't have the protection of their fleece. And if you have a light-colored animal that's susceptible to sunburn, you want to do something to protect them from sunburn. I like cornstarch, just plain old cornstarch out of your kitchen, and I put it in a sifter. And I usually, if they were white, I would just take them over and there would be cornstarch in it, and I would sift them right over the top, and they'd look like the top of a cake for a couple of days, but their skin won't turn pink and they won't get sunburned. And that'll give them enough time to have enough regrowth that hair will protect their skin from getting burnt. So just because you're done clipping doesn't mean you're quite done with the shearing process. Now it's Chelsea the alpaca's turn. Chelsea is standing here in the chute, and as we do that, I want to pay particular notice and remind everyone, as always, whenever you're restraining an animal, you want to make sure that your restraint is set up for the safety of you and your animal. These straps have quick releases. If you were using a lead rope, you would want to make sure you use a quick release knot. And I can't stress enough how important it is to be able to tie a quick release knot every time you tie your animal to make sure that everyone can be safely released if they need to be without you or your animal being hurt. A majority of alpacas are shorn laying down. That is primarily because it's easiest for the people who are shearing them. And it's up to you as you decide and you know your animal which way is the best for your animal to be shorn. In a health emergency, it doesn't matter how you do it, the important part is that you get the fleece off of the animal and get them cooled down so their body temperature can get regulated and they can get back to health. Worst case scenario, take it off of their barrel. They might be the laughing stock of the other alpacas in their field, but it doesn't matter. They'll be alive. They'll be healthy. They'll be okay. So if you have an animal that's overheating and you don't have a way to get them shorn the alpaca way, get it off of their barrel. Another thing, if you can't get it off their neck, if you don't have the equipment or you don't have the ability to do it, if you can shear down the middle of their neck, down their throat to underneath their front legs and create a vent. Remember we were talking about the vents between the axillary regions of their front and back legs. If you can create a place where there's airflow through their neck, you can do that on a llama or an alpaca. but whatever you can do to get the fiber so it is away from the skin and air can circulate to cool the animal down, the better it is for the animal. As we shear Chelsea, we're going to exclusively shear her with electric shears. Please remember that hand shearing would be the same regardless of whether it's for a llama or an alpaca. You're going to do it the same way, but electric shears are going to be quicker, and once the animal gets used to the vibration and the sound, it's really an efficient way to do it. Now, as you're preparing to do the electric shears, if you put your hand on the animal, remember we were talking about balance. If you stay balanced and put your hand on the animal, you can usually feel that animal shift their weight one way or another. And if you balance them back so they have their weight on all four legs equally, they'll move around a lot less. And I've found that if you turn the clippers on and just put them against their side and they get used to the vibration, you've got smooth sailing the rest of your shearing. Again, the traditional clip for an alpaca is from their ears all the way down, feathered on their legs, all the way down, and their legs feathered out. But you're getting the whole prime fleece, including the neck. Part of that's just tradition. Part of that is because alpacas tend to have such a dense fleece that they can really use the extra airflow on their skin. We're going to look at the barrel. We're doing the same thing. We're taking these vent areas and going up to the withers, and the vent and going up here. And this, if you're trying to secure the health of your animal for the summer and for the heat, if you can get this off of them, you'll be okay. As you can see, Chelsea's perfectly content standing here while I'm shearing her. Once she got used to the vibration of the clippers, everything was fine, and it's an easy process to shear an alpaca while they're standing up. That being said, it's common practice to lay an alpaca down, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that when it's done in a safe, relaxed environment and you have the proper equipment. Professional shearers do it on a regular basis. An important thing to remember is that a llama is significantly larger and they are not used to being laid down. I do not recommend, and we do not recommend, laying a llama down for the purpose of shearing at any time. It's very easy to break a leg and cause a lot of stress on a llama when they will stand very peacefully and very relaxed and be happy to have their shearing. As you can see, I've brought my clippers straight up and stopped so we can evaluate the length of her fleece, what she's grown in the last year. And that makes a nice sharp line. And even though it doesn't matter for the health, it's kind of nice to see the difference between a taper and feathering it in and the straight line. Another thing to remember with alpacas and with llamas is when you're doing underneath their belly, and you get the coarser hair, if you can get in between their two front legs and get the long hair that's hanging there, that will allow a lot more airflow underneath their legs and in their or on their belly, as well as when they lay. A lot of times they lay out with their front legs straight out and they have their belly on the ground. And if they don't have that long fleece that's stopping the air from flowing, they'll be a lot cooler.